Achilles, Alexander the Great, the myth and the man who lived it. The beach at Troy, a morning like every other morning of the 10th year, except that this one will end it. A man in bronze armor walks towards the Trojan line. He has been told by his mother, who is a goddess, and therefore in a position to know that he has a choice. He can go to Pythia, grow old, raise children, and be forgotten. Or he can stay at Troy, kill Hector, and die young, and his name will outlast the stones of the city he is burning. He has chosen. He is walking toward the gate. The shield is new, the grief is not. His companion is dead, killed in armor that was not his own, and the man in bronze is no longer fighting for glory or for Greece. He is fighting because rage is the last thing he has, and he intends to use all of it before the sun goes down. The light on the Hellespont is hard and clear. The wind carries the smell of salt and smoke. Somewhere behind the walls, Hector is putting on his armor and saying goodbye to his wife, and he already knows how this ends. Cut to the Granicus River, northwestern Anatolia, May 334 BC. A young king on a warhorse rides the edge of the water and looks at the opposite bank. The Persian cavalry is drawn up on the far side, thousands of them, their line stretching along the ridge above the river. The water is fast and cold with spring melt. His generals tell him not to cross. Parmenion, who has been fighting longer than the king has been alive, says to wait, to camp, to find a better crossing in the morning. The king does not wait. He rides into the river. He is 22 years old. He is wearing white plumes on his helmet so that everyone on both banks can see exactly where he is. He wants them to see. A Persian officer rides down to meet him in the shallows. A sword comes down on the king's helmet and shears off one of the white plumes. Another blade is rising. A companion named Cleotus reaches across and cuts off the Persian's arm at the shoulder. The king does not stop. He rides up the far bank and into the Persian line, and by evening the satrapal army of Western Asia Minor has ceased to exist, and the young man with one plume missing is standing on the eastern shore, bleeding from a scalp wound, already looking toward the interior. 2 charges. 2 men moving toward death as if it were the only direction that mattered. One exists in a poem. The other read that poem every night before sleep. Kept it in a gold casket he had taken from the Persian king, and spent his entire life trying to make the poem true. Achilles is not, in the way this book usually means it, historical. He belongs to the Iliad, which belongs to a tradition of oral poetry that remembered a war fought, if it was fought, around the 12th century BC, whether a man named Achilles stood on a beach at Troy is a question no one can answer. But whether Achilles shaped military culture is not a question at all. He did. He shaped it more than most commanders who actually lived. The formation of Achilles is the formation of a contradiction. He is the son of a mortal king and an immortal sea goddess, which means he is the strongest warrior alive, and also the most temporary. Thetis dipped him in the river Styx, or she held him over a fire, or she did something else that the tradition cannot quite agree on. And the result was a body that could not be harmed except in one place. The one place is the heel. The symbolism is not subtle, but it is effective. Achilles is invulnerable everywhere except in the spot where he is held. His method of war is simple: attack. He does not strategize. He does not flank. He does not wait. He moves towards the strongest point of the enemy line and he breaks it. The Iliad does not describe him thinking about tactics. It describes him running. The Greeks had a word for the battle fury that overtook certain warriors, a state closer to possession than calculation. Achilles is its purest expression. When he fights, the river god rises from the Scamander to stop him, and he fights the river too. But the Iliad is not a poem about fighting. It is a poem about what happens when the best fighter stops. Achilles withdraws from the war in Book 1 because Agamemnon, the Greek commander, has taken his war prize, a woman named Briseis, and humiliated him before the army. The insult is not the woman. The insult is the disrespect. Achilles has been told that his life will be short, and that glory is the only compensation. And now the man who is supposed to guarantee the glory has publicly declared that Achilles' honor is worth less than his own appetite. So Achilles sits in his tent. The Greeks lose. They lose badly. The Trojans burn the ships. Achilles watches. He has made his point. The point is killing his own side. The signature decision comes in Book 18. Patroclus, the person Achilles loves most, has gone out in Achilles' armor, driven the Trojans back, and been killed by Hector. Achilles has no armor. He has no companion. He has nothing except the knowledge that if he kills Hector, he will die soon after. His mother tells him this plainly. He chooses to go, not because the anger has faded, because the anger has found its proper target. What follows is the most famous single combat in Western literature. Hector runs. He runs around the walls of Troy 3 times, which is not cowardice, but recognition. He knows what is coming. When he finally turns to fight, Athena has tricked him into thinking he has help. He does not. The spear finds his throat. Achilles ties the body to his chariot and drags it through the dust. The cost of Achilles is Achilles. He chose a short life and eternal fame, and the poem delivers exactly what was promised. He gets his glory. He gets his death. And the last great scene of the Iliad is not his triumph, but his grief. Priam, Hector's father, comes alone to the Greek camp to beg for his son's body, and Achilles, the man who dragged that body through the dirt, weeps with him. They sit together in the tent and cry for different reasons, and for a moment the rage lifts, and what is left is 2 men who have lost everything, sharing a meal in the dark. That is what survives, not the killing, the weeping. The blind spot of Achilles is the blind spot of every warrior who believes that personal excellence is the same as victory. Achilles is the greatest fighter at Troy. He is also the worst soldier. He sulks when offended. He withdraws when the cause needs him most. He lets his closest friend die in his place because his pride matters more than the war. The Iliad sees this clearly. It loves Achilles, and it sees him clearly, and it does not pretend these are different things. Every commander who followed, for 3,000 years, would have to decide which part of Achilles to inherit, the rage that wins battles, or the pride that loses wars. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedon, a kingdom the rest of Greece considered barely civilized. His father was Philip II, who had transformed Macedonia from a backwater into the dominant military power in Greece through a combination of tactical innovation, diplomatic ruthlessness, and a willingness to get stabbed in the eye and keep fighting. His mother was Olympias, an Epirot princess who kept snakes, claimed descent from Achilles, and may or may not have arranged Philip's assassination. Between them, Alexander received the 2 things that would define his life: the army and the myth. Philip gave him the army. It was the finest military instrument the ancient world had produced. The Macedonian phalanx, armed with the sarissa, a pike 18 feet long, fought as a single organism. The companion cavalry, led by Alexander personally, struck at the decisive point with a speed that no contemporary army could match. Philip drilled these forces for 20 years. Alexander inherited them at 20 and used them for 13 more, and by the end they had marched from Greece to the borders of India. Olympias gave him Achilles. She told him he was descended from the hero. She told him he was destined for something beyond the ordinary measure of kingship. He believed her. When he crossed to Asia in 334, his first act was to visit Troy. He went to what the locals said was Achilles' tomb. He stripped naked and ran around it. He anointed it with oil. He took what was said to be Achilles' shield from the temple of Athena and carried it with him for the rest of his campaigns. He kept the Iliad next to his dagger. Aristotle, who had been his tutor for 3 years in Mieza, had taught him to read it critically. Olympias had taught him to read it as a mirror. From Aristotle, he got the habit of inquiry, the fascination with the edges of the known world, and possibly the conviction that a Greek life was worth more than a barbarian one. From Olympias, he got the certainty that he was not entirely mortal. Between the philosopher and the priestess, the boy never had a chance at modesty. His method of war was Philip's method perfected by a temperament that could not tolerate caution. The oblique cavalry charge, the phalanx holding the center, the moment of personal intervention at the point of crisis. At the Granicus he charged first. At Issus he charged into the Persian center and Darius fled. At Gaugamela he found the gap in a line that stretched beyond the horizon and rode through it. In every major battle, Alexander put himself at the front of the companion cavalry on the right wing and aimed for the enemy commander. If you kill the brain, the body falls. He was wounded at least 8 times. At the siege of the Malian citadel in India, he jumped off the wall alone into the enemy fortress, took an arrow through the lung, and nearly died while his soldiers screamed on the other side. He survived. Barely. His signature decision was not a battle. It was the decision to keep going. After Gaugamela, Darius was dead, Persepolis was burning, and the Persian Empire belonged to Alexander. He was 25. He could have stopped. His army wanted him to stop. Instead, he marched east, through the mountains of Afghanistan, across the Hindu Kush, into the plains of India. At the Hydaspes, he defeated Porus and his war elephants in a monsoon. His army reached the Hypasus River and refused to go further. Alexander argued. He sulked. He waited in his tent for 3 days. The Achilles gesture, daring his men to beg him to continue. They did not. He turned back. The cost of Alexander is the cost of momentum that cannot stop. After the Hypasus, he was never the same. He began demanding that his Greek officers prostrate themselves before him in the Persian style. He drank more. His rages grew lethal. He killed Cleotus, the man who had saved his life at the Granicus, with a javelin at a dinner party, in an argument about whether Philip deserved more credit than Alexander for the conquests. He married Roxana, a Bactrian princess, and ordered his officers to marry Persian women. He adopted Persian dress and Persian court ritual. The Macedonians who had followed him from Pella whispered that the king had become the thing he had conquered. He died in Babylon in June 323, at 32. The cause was fever, or poison, or the accumulated damage of a dozen wounds and a decade of drinking that would have killed anyone without his constitution years earlier. On his deathbed, his generals asked who should inherit the empire. He said, according to one tradition, the strongest. According to another, he said nothing intelligible at all. Within 20 years, every one of his generals was at war with each other, and the empire was in pieces. Set them side by side. One chose a short life and got exactly what he chose. The other chose the same thing, and may not have understood he was choosing it. Achilles knew he would die at Troy. His mother told him so, and the poem confirms it. He knew no such thing. He believed he was Achilles. He ran around the tomb. He slept with the book. He charged first into every river. But Achilles' bargain was with fate, and Alexander's was with himself, and a bargain with yourself was no one to enforce the terms. Achilles stopped fighting, and the Greeks suffered for it, and the poem asks us to hold the contradiction. The hero's rage is both his glory and his crime. Alexander never stopped, and the world suffered for that instead. The Iliad ends with a funeral. Alexander's story ends with an empire that did not survive a single generation, divided by the men who loved him most. What each reveals about the other is this: Achilles is the pure form, the warrior who lives only in the choice between glory and life, and who chooses glory, and the poem holds him in amber at the moment of that choice forever. Alexander is the human attempt to inhabit the pure form, and the attempt is what kills him. You cannot live inside a poem. The poem does not accommodate a body that ages, or an army that is tired, or the realization at the edge of India that the world is larger than any single life can conquer. The poem does not account for the morning after the victory, when the dead are counted and the living want to go home. Every commander in this book will face, in some version, the choice Achilles made and the road Alexander walked, the short life or the long one, the gesture or the consequence, the myth or the morning after. None of them will resolve it. The best of them will understand that it cannot be resolved. The rest will charge into the river with their white plumes on, certain the poem is about them. Achilles weeps with Priam and gives the body back. Alexander, in Babylon, with the fever climbing, gives nothing back. The empire falls. The generals draw their swords. The gold casket that held the Iliad passes into history, and no one records what became of it.